Out front tonight, Trump turning to voters, asking them to pay his bond, his $464 million bond. He says that it's unfair, so he wants other people, regular Americans, to foot the bill. A whole new definition of other people's money. Sending this text message, quote, "Keep your filthy hands off Trump Tower. Democrats want to seize my properties." And then you see there the link to donate money. Now, Trump says he does not have enough money to finance the $464 million bond, and the clock is ticking. He has just 5 days to come up with the money, or the New York Attorney General, Leticia James, is threatening to seize some of his most beloved properties. But James tonight making it clear, she says that Trump does have the money. He just doesn't want to fork it over. In a filing tonight, James writes, quote, "If Trump were truly unable to secure the bond, quote, they at minimum should have consented to have their real estate interests held by the Supreme Court to satisfy the judgment."
Breaking news, Donald Trump says he cannot afford to post a $464 million bond. So he sent a text message to his small dollar donors. The message read, "Keep your filthy hands off Trump Tower. Democrats want to seize my properties." And then a link to donate money. Let that sit for a moment. A man who claims to have $500 million in cash is asking working class Americans, people sending $10, $20, maybe $25 they can barely spare, to help him with a $464 million legal bill. That is a new definition of other people's money. But there is more, because on the same week that Trump's lawyers were in court arguing financial impossibility, that he simply could not find the assets to post even a fraction of the required bond. The Palm Beach Post reported that Eric Trump announced plans to build a new office complex at Trump National Golf Club in Jupiter, Florida, price tag $12 to $15 million. The man who says he cannot afford the bond is planning to spend $15 million on a new building at a Florida golf club. Meanwhile, New York Attorney General Leticia James filed a response tonight that punches a significant hole in the "I can't afford it" argument, pointing to legal options Trump's team never even tried. Tonight, we break down exactly what is happening, why it matters, and what the gap between what Trump says and what the documents show reveals about this entire saga. I'm Hannah Blake. This is Global News Diary. Let's get into it. The fundraising text Trump sent to his donor list this week is the most politically revealing thing his operation has done throughout this entire bond crisis. And it deserves more than a passing headline. "Keep your filthy hands off Trump Tower. Democrats want to seize my properties." Then a link to donate. Every word in that message is chosen with precision to produce a specific emotional response. Filthy hands, my properties. Democrats want to seize. The language is visceral, personal, and urgent. It creates a picture of an attack, corrupt political forces reaching for Trump's most famous building, and positions the donor as a defender, someone standing between the filthy hands and the symbol of everything Trump represents. The legal reality is completely different. Campaign finance law does not allow political donations to be used to satisfy personal civil judgments. The money donors send in response to that text goes to Trump's campaign's general operating fund, used for staff, advertising, travel, events. It has nothing to do with the $464 million bond. The campaign quickly clarified this after the text went out, but the text was not crafted to be legally precise. It was crafted to generate outrage, and outrage generates clicks on the donate link. The people receiving that message, many of them working class Trump supporters who genuinely believe this case is a politically motivated attack on their candidate, are not writing bonds. They are not providing collateral. Their $20 contributions will not keep a single hand, filthy or otherwise, off Trump Tower. But they believe, because the text implies it, that they are part of the defense. The disconnection between the emotional reality the text creates and the financial reality of where the money goes is the mechanism at work. And it is a mechanism that has been running throughout the entire Trump legal saga. Every indictment becomes a fundraising email. Every adverse ruling becomes an emergency text. Every deadline becomes a donation pitch. The legal calendar and the fundraising calendar have become the same calendar. Trump Tower was chosen specifically for the text because it generates maximum emotional response. The base knows Trump Tower. They have seen it on television for decades. It is where he descended the escalator in June 2015 and launched the campaign that changed American politics. Threatening Trump Tower in a fundraising message is threatening everything the building represents represents to Trump supporters. James's actual enforcement focus was initially on Seven Springs in Westchester, a property with weaker collateral claims and less emotional resonance. The fundraising operation picked the symbol, not the legally relevant asset. That is the difference between political communication and legal strategy. The Palm Beach Post story about the Jupiter construction project is the kind of specific, concrete detail that breaks through the abstraction of a $464 million legal case, and it is exactly why good journalism matters in complex financial stories. Most people do not have an intuitive grasp of what $464 million means. The number is too large for everyday comparison. But everybody understands the idea of someone claiming they are broke while announcing plans to build a new building. That cognitive dissonance is immediately visible and immediately meaningful. Eric Trump told the Palm Beach Post that the Trump Organization looks forward to adding a beautiful new office complex to Trump National Golf Club Jupiter. Price tag $12 to $15 million, announced in the same week that Trump's lawyers were in court arguing that finding collateral for even a fraction of the $464 million bond was practically impossible. To be fair about what this story does and does not prove, complex real estate organizations routinely use entity-level financing, construction loans, and partner capital that do not directly reflect the personal liquid assets of the parent company's principals. The Jupiter project may be financed through a specific Trump entity using leverage that is completely separate from the personal liquidity question at the center of the bond calculation. The $15 million for Jupiter and the $464 million bond may genuinely come from different pools of money, but here is the point that stands regardless of that analysis. When you are in court telling a judge that you have tried every option and face genuine financial impossibility in posting a bond, and simultaneously your organization is announcing new capital expenditures, you are creating both an optics problem and an evidentiary problem. Your lawyers have told the court your assets cannot serve as bond collateral. Then your son goes to the local newspaper to announce new construction spending. James's team will point to that contradiction in their briefs. Show us the actual financial documentation. Demonstrate the impossibility. Do not ask the court to accept it on faith while new investment is being announced. Attorney General Leticia James filed a response tonight that methodically dismantles Trump's "I can't afford it" argument, not by disputing that he faces financial constraints, but by identifying the options his legal team never pursued. James wrote that if Trump were truly unable to secure the bond, at minimum his team should have consented to have their real estate interests held by the Supreme Court to satisfy the judgment. That is a direct reference to a specific legal mechanism under New York civil procedure that Trump's lawyers appear to have entirely ignored. Here is how that mechanism works. Instead of requiring an insurance company to write a surety bond, which requires the bonding company to assess Trump's assets and creditworthiness and stand behind the guarantee, Trump could pledge his real estate directly to the court as security. The court holds a security interest in the property. If Trump loses his appeal, the court orders the property sold to satisfy the judgment. No insurance company required, no surety bond market to navigate, no 30 companies to convince. Trump Tower or Mar-a-Lago pledge directly to the court. The appeal proceeds. The property is security. If he wins, the pledge dissolves. If he loses, the property satisfies the judgment. Trump's team did not pursue this option, and James is telling the appellate division the impossibility argument is built on a false foundation. There were alternatives. They were not tried. At every level of the practical impossibility claim, James is finding another avenue that Trump's lawyers either did not pursue or did not document. The impossibility, she argues, is constructed, not real. James was also direct about what she believes is actually driving the situation. If Trump genuinely could not secure the bond, the real estate option existed. He did not take it, which raises the question she is implicitly posing to the appellate court. Why won't he pledge the real estate directly? The answer, James argues, is that pledging the real estate at actual market value, not at the inflated values from his financial statements, would require acknowledging that his properties are worth what the court found them to be worth. Not $426 million for Mar-a-Lago, $18 to $27 million. The figure Trump's team offered as their best case, $100 million of the $464 million required, is revealing in ways that complicate the practical impossibility framing significantly. $100 million is not nothing. It is more than most major corporations have available in unrestricted liquid assets on any given day. It is more than most American families will earn across multiple lifetimes. The fact that Trump's team could get to $100 million means that absolute financial impossibility was never the accurate description of the situation. What the $100 million offer reveals is that the impossibility was threshold dependent, not absolute. At $464 million, 30 companies said no, and the full amount could not be assembled. At $175 million, the number the appellate division ultimately set after reducing the bond requirement, a single company, Don Hankey, said yes and wrote the bond in one day. At $100 million, Trump himself was apparently ready to move. The legal argument Trump's team made was not, this is hard at the full amount, but manageable at a lower number. The argument was that the whole thing was unconstitutional, unprecedented, and that nobody should have to post any bond ever. That framing overstated the impossibility and understated the options. And James's filing dismantles it by identifying the alternatives not pursued and pointing out that the impossibility dissolved the moment the number changed. The appellate division's decision to reduce the bond to $175 million and let the market decide is the court's implicit agreement with James's analysis. The impossibility was not absolute. It was calibrated to a specific dollar amount. At the right number, the market could accommodate it, which means the fight was about the number, not about some genuine and insurmountable financial barrier. The entire bond crisis, the fundraising text, the Jupiter announcement, and the James filing all circle back to the same central reality that has defined this case from the beginning: the gap between what Trump says his properties are worth and what independent analysis shows they are actually worth. Mar-a-Lago on Trump's financial statements, $426 million. Mar-a-Lago, according to independent appraisers, brought in during the trial $18 to $27 million. That is not aggressive valuation. That is not a defensible difference of opinion between reasonable analysts. That is a 16-to-1 gap between the stated number and the market number. The bond crisis is a direct consequence of that gap. When Trump needs to post collateral against a $464 million judgment, the bonding companies are looking at the same properties the court examined. They are not accepting the $426 million figure for Mar-a-Lago. They are looking at actual market value. And at actual market value, the collateral does not cover the bond. The fraud that generated the $354 million judgment is the same reason the assets cannot satisfy the judgment. The scheme that worked for 30 years, claim properties are worth far more than they are, use those inflated claims to access capital at better rates, collapsed at the exact moment it was most needed. The fiction that extracted financial advantages from banks and insurance companies for a decade is now the reason those same assets are worthless as bond collateral. Trump's response to all of this has been consistent and predictable. Total witch hunt, rigged judge, election interference, Biden persecution, unconstitutional attack. The base hears it and believes it. The fundraising texts generate response. The donations flow in. But the bond deadline does not care about Truth Social posts. The enforcement mechanism does not pause for emergency fundraising emails. The appellate division does not adjust its timeline based on poll numbers. The legal system is running on its own clock at its own pace, completely indifferent to the political narrative surrounding it. The fraud finding stands, the case continues. And the gap between what Trump claims and what the documents show, the gap that produced the $354 million judgment, the bond crisis, the 30 no's, and the fundraising text about filthy hands, that gap is still on the legal record, still being measured, still the subject of ongoing litigation in the appellate courts. There is a broader principle at work in this story that deserves direct statement because it goes beyond the specific legal mechanics of this particular case to something more fundamental about how accountability operates. Trump built his entire public identity on a specific story. The story is, I am a winner, I build things, I make deals, I am worth more than anyone thinks. And he sold that story so effectively that it produced a television show, a best-selling book, and ultimately the presidency. The civil fraud case is the legal system's answer to that story. Not that Trump is not rich. The man has real estate holdings and a brand with genuine value. The answer is that the specific numbers he was claiming on his financial statements were fabricated, and he was using those fabricated numbers to extract financial benefits he was not entitled to. That is fraud. And under New York law, the disgorgement of the benefits obtained through fraud, $354 million plus interest, is the consequence. The bond crisis made that consequence concrete in a way that court filings never could. When 30 insurance companies independently look at your claimed $500 million in assets and say not good enough, the abstraction of a judicial finding becomes something tangible and visible. When your son announces a $15 million construction project, in the same week your lawyers are arguing financial impossibility, the gap between the claim and the reality becomes a news story with a specific address and a specific price tag. The legal track and the political track are running in parallel, and they are not talking to each other. On the legal track, the fraud finding stands, the case continues, and James is still litigating at the appellate level. On the political track, Trump won the presidency 8 months after the fraud finding. Both of those things are simultaneously true. The rule of law, not as an abstraction, not as a slogan, but as a set of mechanisms that operate on their own schedule, independent of political outcomes, is what this week clarified. The $87,000 per day interest accrual did not pause for Truth Social posts. The Monday deadline did not move for emergency fundraising emails. The 30 no's did not change because of poll numbers. And the man who wrote the book on using other people's money is, at the moment of maximum financial and legal pressure, asking other people for their money. The base is responding, the donations are flowing, and somewhere in an appellate courthouse, the clock is still running. Here is today's question. Trump said he cannot afford the bond while his son announced a new $15 million construction project in the same week. Leticia James says there were legal options his team never tried. Do you think the practical impossibility argument was genuine, or was it a legal and political strategy? And what does it say that 30 insurance companies all independently reached the same conclusion about his assets? Drop your answer in the comments. This community consistently brings the most thoughtful analysis on this platform. The best responses get featured in our next video. If this breakdown gave you the full picture that headlines alone cannot deliver, hit that like button right now. 2 seconds. That is all it takes. Subscribe if you are not already here. We cover the stories that matter, legal, political, military, with the depth and context they deserve. Turn on notifications. Cases like this one develop fast, and the next chapter is always closer than you think. Share this video. Send it to someone following this story who wants the complete picture. This is the breakdown they need. I'm Hannah Blake. This is Global News Diary. We will be back with the next major story the moment it breaks. Stay sharp, stay informed.